Welcome to the Intentional Encourager podcast, where each episode brings you compelling conversations and stories designed to entertain, enlighten, and encourage. And now here's your host, Brian Sexton.
And welcome into the Intentional Encourager podcast. I'm your host, Brian Sexton. Thank you for joining us again today. And, again, I can't say this enough. I am blown away by the caliber of people that choose to come on the Intentional Encourager podcast and share their story with you. And another one is here with us today. He is Marcus Chan. From Speedos to selling seven-figure contracts. You know I'm going to ask him about that. He is the founder of the Six Figure Sales Academy, all over LinkedIn. But again, you can find him right here, right now on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Marcus, how you doing today, brother?
Hey, Brian, I'm fantastic, man. Thank you so much for having me on. And I've got to tell you what, man, your radio announcer voice is fantastic. I love it. I absolutely love it.
You know what, man? It's the only thing that I can do reasonably well. and so why not have a podcast, man? Right?
I love it.
Your pipes are sounding pretty clean themselves today, my man. And if you're watching the video on YouTube, Marcus, I'm having microphone envy right now because Marcus has got a killer mic there. Of course, I use the Pfeiffer 670B. Shout out to the guys at Pfeiffer. And so again, but yeah, Marcus has got a great setup there. And man, I appreciate you joining me. Let's start here. You're a sales guy. I'm a sales guy. That's where I cut my teeth. 25 years in customer engagement and sales management, things like that. I'm not going to ask you how you're selling in a pandemic. I'm going to ask you this to start out. What have you changed? What are you not doing in sales right now during this pandemic?
Yeah. Well, here's what I find to be really interesting, right? And this is my opinion. I think you're going to appreciate this, Brian, because since you've been selling for, over a couple of decades now, you've seen the ups and downs of sales. You've seen the ups and downs and everything. I'm a firm believer the fundamentals never go out of style, okay? And I think over the last 10 years or so of us being in a bull market, we have seen some poor habits kind of creep in for many reps that are now starting to bite them in the butt, And what I mean by that is, like, over the last 5 to 10 years, we've been able to see a lot of people be able to, they talk a lot about automation and templated emails and just really driving that numbers game, which has been a very old school concept, but really utilizing automation for that. And they're using it on, say, LinkedIn, and they are sending automated messages nonstop, and they're not having much success. Mm-hmm. I mean, the reality is customized messaging and personalization and being able to read your prospect, that's a fundamental of sales. That has not changed. And I think right now, those who maybe only sold in the last, say, 5 or 10 years, who did not really realize, and they could just basically churn and burn prospects, they're saying, wow, holy smokes, now I'm not getting a hold of my prospects anymore. I'm not going to be able to get a hold of people. We're not converting deals. And they're realizing the tactics they were using really has not been effective. They've only been effective in the sense of they had more people to sell to in a good economy. And when the economy kind of tightens up, that really immediate need of those customers they're less likely to take action today. So definitely one thing I've seen for sure that people really should stop doing right now. I mean, I never did because I never believed in it, but is stopping the automated messaging, the templated messaging, but being customized, personal, and real. And people kind of overdo the word emotional intelligence and EQ and empathy, but that's something that never goes out of style, right? I mean, the best marketing and sales strategy is always caring for your clients, your customers. That's never changed. It's even more prevalent today because there's so many tools that drive automation.
Marcus, you've hit on it, and that's the thing is people have always used LinkedIn as a way to grow their business, right? The more connections that I can get, the more people I can connect with, I'm going to grow my business. LinkedIn, and I've said this, and I want to get your thoughts around this as well. I see a shift happening in LinkedIn where people are now starting to say, I value connection more than I do business or connecting with people just to do business. I value connecting with people that really add value to me, almost a professional, if you will, a professional place to get encouraged, to get uplifted, to get
Yes.
motivated, and things like that. You've been using the platform for a long time, and that's how you and I got together.
Mm.
What are you starting to see in your social media platforms that's starting to move that way? Because I love what you said there just now. Is people are figuring out what they did before that took them from point A to point B is not going to get them from point B to point C.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think especially for like LinkedIn, right? I think it's because, and maybe it's been driven because of maybe the pandemic, so there's more people online, which could definitely be part of the reasoning. I think people are actually seeing LinkedIn as a true like social media networking site, like before, like, like with like Facebook and Instagram, you kind of have these little, groups of people that will kind of come about. And now on LinkedIn, where it's like that professional one where it's like, like I'm connected with many people now that have nothing to do with sales or they're salespeople. They're not even salespeople. They're just like in different industries, and we're connecting, and we're having offline conversations, and we're having great relationships that are developing as a result. So I'm seeing it turn into just a really powerful tool in terms of really building new friendships and relationships that's outside what was done before. And what I'm also seeing is it's becoming really a place where people like are showing up to consume the content they really want to consume. Like, I mean, I'm on all the platforms, but I can't tell you how many times I hear someone say, I'm not on Facebook anymore, right? I'm not on Instagram anymore, because they're tired of some of maybe the political posts and the propaganda, whatever they see on there. They're tired of it, And is there some of that stuff on LinkedIn? For sure there is. But I think as of right now, it's not as prevalent, right? So
Yeah.
people are able to go to LinkedIn to get positive, uplifting things. Now, does that mean there's not negativity out there? There still is. And I definitely see there's some sites out there or profiles that troll people on LinkedIn who put out positive messages. That's just their thing, right? They make fun of, the influencers of LinkedIn. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, I know if I scroll through my LinkedIn feed versus my Instagram feed or Facebook feed, I am more positively uplifted going through my LinkedIn feed, right? And I love that, right? And I love being able to consume the content of text and video, etc. To me, that's very, very powerful. And I don't see it as just a work-only site. I mean, I've seen the power of it for a couple of years now. I'm like, this is a great site in general to connect with people, build a great brand, but also just really build a nice network of people that actually are helping support you and uplift you. It's a powerful tool.
Well, and that's the reason that we started the Intentional Encourager podcast was, listen, there are rock stars like you and Dale Dupree and guys like that, and you guys are friends, and I love what you're doing. And I just mentioned those guys. And there's tons more people out there. A lot of them have been on this podcast. I wanted to leave the expertise to you guys because you're doing such a fabulous job there. And I thought, okay, this is what I can do is I can bring encouragement. I can bring intentional encouragement to this platform. When you look at the way you're using LinkedIn more, and you mentioned you're on all the social platforms, what content is really valuable to Marcus Chan?
Yeah, for me to consume or for me to put out?
For you to consume.
Yeah. So, for me, I mean, it's one of those things where I still love text only posts. It's very, very quick for me to read and consume. And I like that, right? So that's a personal thing. But I really, really enjoy like creative, short, powerful videos. And that could be about anything. It could be about sales, it could be about marketing, it could be about mental health. One of my friends, Michael Cortina, he's in the mental health space and optimizing, the brain. And his videos are all about that. They're 1 to 2 minutes. They're powerful, they're impactful, they're uplifting. I love that, right? I got another friend, Jonathan Dunn. He is like more of a personal growth coach, and he puts out fantastic content. Some's a little bit longer, but it's always really impactful personal development content. It's all very, very uplifting. And I love stuff like that, Things like that to me is just, it's inspiring. It's inspiring because, it's one of the things where, and I'm sure it's probably similar for you, where you put out that piece of content you create, whether it's a post, a podcast, a video, and if you can just impact one person,
Yeah.
it's very powerful. And some of those people I mentioned, when I consume some of their content, it always positively impacts me in a good way, right? Like, it's kind of like if you're having a rough day, just read one of the posts and just getting some new perspective, right? Is very powerful. Even if it's stuff you heard before, it doesn't really matter, because sometimes the medicine, it tastes just right when you just deliver the right time. And that's where I see that type of stuff, right? And that's where, I think when you're on social media like LinkedIn, you have to be very intentional with making sure you seek out that type of information, because right now we're starting to see a little bit of a shift in the algorithm in terms of what type of content they put in front of people. So sometimes some of that stuff might just get hidden. So I will purposely seek out their stuff every day to make sure I can check it out and get that little positivity juice, if you will, right? And I think it's really powerful for anybody. So for each person who's out there and they're consuming content on any platform, don't just rely on just the feed. You may have to go out and seek out some of those people as well intentionally to make sure you can see their content and get that, that little juice up if you need every single day.
You've really hit on something really brilliant there, Marcus. And I love what you said there. I think for a lot of people, it's finding the balance of posts that will help them.
Yes.
Posts that will, and I watched one of your posts today about follow-up, which was great. The great little short nuggets of expertise that will help somebody, whether you're a relatively new salesperson, you're a mid-tenured, even a very seasoned tenured salesperson. You can mix that in. But if you're all expertise, and no encouragement there, even as a professional, you still need that encouragement.
100%.
So let me ask you this. Let me now frame the question another way. What do you find for you is valuable content for you to post? Because you're somewhat diverse in your content as well. It's sales based, but you're very intentional about the diversity of your content that you're posting as well.
Yeah, so I put them in a few different buckets, right? So there's definitely very tactical tips, like basically like, do this and this will help you get results. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one type, and that could be video or text. I'll do both, right? And then I'll do some sort of probably inspirational or motivational, and that could be focused. That could be two different buckets. It could be a sales focused one. It could be a more general one, right? And then so that's kind of like a couple different buckets, right? And then I'll do another one where it could just be just a lesson, a moral lesson or a life lesson. That could be either a sales-based one or a life-based one. And those are kind of buckets I dump them into, right? And each week I use a kind of mixture of all of those, right? Probably at least one tactical sales tip, and then a mixture of the motivational and inspirational pieces from sales to personal life. And sometimes it's just a perspective piece, right? And I find for me, it varies. Some stuff will definitely get more eyes on it and impact more people, and some won't. I mean, I'll give you an example. Right? One of my top posts that really trended really well, it didn't trend well because of the reason I wanted. I can't remember the last one I had. It was months ago, but I basically shared a story how I was overly aggressive as a brand new rep, did not read the situation well with the prospect, and they pulled a gun on me. And I was terrified. Nobody, I didn't get hurt. He didn't shoot at me or anything. But that post just went like almost pretty much viral on LinkedIn. But it wasn't because of like the lesson. Some people love the lesson, but there's some people like, oh, that's made up. That's not true. I'm like, it did happen. Like, do you think every time someone pulls a gun on somebody, it's going to be the news? No. Like, nobody was shot. Nothing happened. It was just a scary moment. Like, that was just me being a bonehead rep. Not be intentional. So that's where it's like the views aren't always important, but really it's about the impact. So I look at whatever post I put out there, and they'll usually the amount of views and shares really tell me the impact it's going to have on people, right? If it's a highly shared item, pretty good topic, or if a lot of people are tagged in it, probably a good sign that it really impacted people, right? And at the end of the day, I don't focus on viral content. That's not my goal. Right. And some people, they really care about that. I don't care about that. I care about impact. I care about helping someone, right? If they're reading an inspirational post because I shared a story about how, my dad was an immigrant. He came to America with absolutely nothing. And I share that story. Well, that's very powerful for many people, right? To hear that. and it may not trend as well as some other things, but I know it's going to be of high impact for someone out there who's having a tough day and they need some perspective on their life. So I focus on impact over, the virility, if you will, of a post.
I was a little bit concerned for your safety because I don't know if you noticed or not, but you had a small intruder that was trying to get in your back door there.
I saw
that
him.
was probably your daughter.
Well, so you can find this hilarious. It's actually my son, Brian. His hair is just out of control.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean not mean. Yeah, I did not.
His hair is out of control. He refuses to let us cut it.
Hey, man, I've been there. I got a
20-year-old
that went through that phase, man. It was like, I'm just gonna let my hair grow, and he was. He was looking like, but I was a little bit concerned. I'm like, Marcus has got an intruder, about to roll up on the intentional encouragement.
Sometimes that happens. He wanted to drop some words of intentional encouragement, so.
Yeah, no, it would have been all good, man. It would have, and I'll tell you this, man. It's funny. You had a gun pulled on you. One time I was doing an event for a customer as a regional sales guy. And I didn't know this, but the customer's event was actually a political rally.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, wow, this
right.
is interesting for a United States senator. And I'm like, I was just coming here to show some parts and talk to some people. And I didn't realize I'd rolled up on a political rally,
Yeah.
So those stories that you have, and you're exactly right, Marcus, you the longer you're a rep and the longer you do things, you have those instances where you look back and there are moments that define you as a salesperson, and you go, man, here's the lesson that I learned from it. Here's the takeaway from it. And you go, okay, that, to your point, you mentioned I was a bonehead rep. Listen, man, we've all had those bonehead moments. Let me go here real quick before we pivot into your story. Where do you think we go post-pandemic with social media platforms like LinkedIn and things like that? How will companies use social media post-pandemic to really supercharge their sales? Because I think companies have really had to dial back, be way more empathetic, not bombard their customer with as much messaging, but go, look, we're here for you. We're going through the same things you are. Can you kind of look into your crystal ball and kind of see, what do you see post-pandemic, how companies reach customers?
Yeah. So I'm going to break them into probably like 3 buckets, if you will. Okay. So I think there's going to be the very progressive companies, and the progressive companies utilize social platforms like, LinkedIn or Facebook. They use it as a way to generate demand. Okay. They do demand generation, meaning they're putting so much value out there. It's creating leads. They're not pitching. They're not putting posts about pitching, but they have also have turned their employees and their leadership teams into brand ambassadors. And we see that with some great companies already. I think Gong does a great example. This Gravy does a great example. They utilize the platforms, and they trust their people to go out there and post valuable content about anything.
That's a fabulous point.
Right.
That's
it might have zero deal. Point. Right. And they're building a brand and awareness. And people like when I think about I think a great example is a gal named Sarah Brazier, right? She's over at Gong, and she posts some great content. So when I'm thinking about, great recording software or something for, recording coaching reps, that's what I think about. I think about Sarah and I think about Gong because the brand she's built there. It doesn't matter where she goes. She doesn't carry that brand with her. Right. And the progressive companies, they know, and they're already doing this. They're trusting people to post and do whatever they want to build their own personal brands, in which ultimately now leverages, or the company leverages off their personal brand. That's very powerful. That's what progressive companies are already doing. That's a very small percentage. I would say if I put a percent, maybe 1%, maybe 5%. It's very small.
Well, let me jump in here, Marcus, because I am starting to see companies like Amazon and companies like that are using their employees as brand ambassadors. And I think it's a great idea. And I would like to see companies take it a step further and say, this is what I value about this company.
Yep.
And let me step into a buyer's shoes for a minute. Because I've said this, Marcus, the biggest thing that reps do is they forget how to be customers themselves.
Right.
They forget what is really truly valuable, and every customer defines value differently.
That's right.
So value is not going to be the same for customers, but a lot of reps forget why they buy themselves.
That's right.
And I love that. I think Amazon is doing that. I want to see more companies do that, and I want to say I want to see more companies, to your point, say, as an employee, this is what we do that if I were a customer, I would find to be incredibly valuable. And as an average person, I think it will resonate with you because of
100%.
X, Y, Z. I
Yeah.
love what you said. I love what you said there because, instead of hiring an ad agency, and nothing against that,
Right.
and hiring actors or actresses to do why not just let your employees tell your story?
100%. Let them humanize it, right? And I think it's kind of like this. So let's just say, for example, if Amazon has a big push for their people to do a philanthropy event, right? Like locally, just do a philanthropy event, give back to the local community, however way it's going to be, right? Whether it's, Habitat for Humanity or doing whatever, food drives, whatever, right? So instead of saying, hey, leaders and employees, post this image of these stock images we give you, instead they go and do it. And then they just encourage them, hey, share, put a post up if you want. So they could say, hey everyone, check out what me and my team did today. Boom, boom, hashtag Amazon, and they're helping out. They're feeding needy kids. That's very powerful because it's a very organic and very touching human-based post, right? And that's what I see to be the best stuff. And my last company before I started my business, I did that all the time, right? And the way I utilized it was for recruiting purposes because I want to make sure people knew, like, hey, we have a great company, but I didn't want to post these stock images like, hey, go apply here. I would say, hey, look, check out this amazing awards event for our top winners here. And, congrats to all our winners. So they would see the culture, they would see the company's all about without me directly saying, look at this, come work for us or buy this. And
well,
so
Marcus,
that's what's like,
Marcus, let me jump in here again because you are just you're bringing a lot to the table that is just common sense things to think about, because more and more we are seeing, even in a country of 350 million people, now we're starting to see people around us that have been affected directly by COVID-19.
Yep.
And there might be an opportunity for someone to tell their story and say, hey, I had a loved one that was hospitalized due to COVID-19. And my company X stepped up and did this, and this, and helped me through this unbelievable time. And that's why I believe in the mission of our company. What you said there is just so powerful because it recruits for you
100%.
without recruiting for you.
That's right.
And you can keep your internal motives pure, and you can say, we didn't do this to recruit new talent. This is what we do all the time. This is our culture. This is who we are 100% of the time. But yet now you have built so much value externally and internally. I love what you said there. And business owners, if you're listening to this, or marketing people, if you're listening to this, man, really grab a hold of what Marcus has just said there and really consider those internal customer stories instead of the extra. We're so busy, Marcus, focusing on the external customer story.
Right.
We forget about the internal customer story.
And people connect with that, and they want to partner up with the good, solid companies doing good things, and that's just it. It's not actually it's a very simple strategy, which is, hey, provide the culture and support for people to share what they want on social media and don't condemn them, right? So that means usually if you do a good job taking care of your people, they're probably going to do it. If they are proud to work at your company, they're probably going to post stuff and share stuff about your company. That's going to happen, whether it's philanthropy, a team event, maybe it's just an after hours happy hour, right? They're going to share those things on social media and not have to worry. And that's very powerful because then it basically will create demand for your business. It creates awareness. People will like it. It's very powerful. And that's the progressive companies that are already doing that. Then there's the other companies who are wanting to do that, but they're not quite there. So they might be doing the stock images. They're very conservative in terms of their approach, right? They're like, okay, you know what? Like, Here, we're going to choose brand ambassadors. Here are the images. Share these. But that doesn't really work, right? It dilutes the messaging,
Yeah.
all right?
Yeah.
People see through that. And then there's the ones who are going to do nothing. They're going to say, oh, it's just social media. It's just another fad, right? But here's the thing. Those principles we just discussed just a few minutes ago, those principles apply to every single platform. They really do. You can do the same thing on Facebook, on Instagram, to XYZ platform in the future. So if you have that progressive mindset of a company that you're looking ahead, you build the habits up front as part of the culture. So regardless of the platform, the employees are already posting, they're already doing these things, which will ultimately help the business. It'll actually probably retain more people, realistically, because they're proud to work for a company that allows them to have a voice and to share whatever they want on social media without repercussion.
Yeah. And I love that. And here's the thing. You got a lot of these companies out there that go, by golly, we've already bought the stock images. We're already running with it. We've got this already budgeted out for this particular type of promotion. We're going to run with it. And they wonder why it doesn't have the success that it has, is because there was no thought to it. It was, let's get it out there. Just, it's like you talk about with lead generation, with reps and things like that. You're just throwing so much content at people that you're going, well, I wonder why it didn't stick. Well, there was no thought put into it. You're buying leads that you don't know are any good or not. You're just putting content out there. Man, we could go for goodness, man. I should have booked you for 2 hours, man, so we could have done a bunch of different things. But I've got to get into your story because it is fascinating. You and your parents emigrated to the United States from China. So I want you to go back as far as you want to go. Tell as much of the story as you can. I've also got to ask you, at some point, we're going to get to the sign that's right behind you from Aristotle, and I want you to talk about the meaning of that to you. But Marcus, the floor is yours, man. You go as far back and tell your story as far back as you want to go.
Well, I appreciate that, right? So, as I mentioned, my parents are immigrants, right? My dad's from China, my mom's from Taiwan, and early on,
dude, I thought you were from Georgia, man. I thought you were.
I know, right? Don't be fooled by my accent, right? So,
I know, man.
English is actually my second language. So, so my dad, when he came to, before he came to America, he actually was put in during the Cultural Revolution. His whole family, very, very poor, like real third world country poor, was put into a communist re-education camp. He eventually escaped away, made his way to Hong Kong, eventually made it to the U.S., got sponsored to the U.S., and just came to America with absolutely nothing, right? And like many early Chinese immigrants around that same time in the 70s, he went to San Francisco. So was there, lived in a house, like 6 other people in a very small apartment, right? Trying to figure out his life. He basically was like, I came to America because I can actually have choices, right? So eventually went to Taiwan, met my mom, brought her back. They bought their first house in Springfield, Oregon, it's a very old, beat up neighborhood, bad neighborhood, kids doing drugs. So we grew up, when I was born a few years later, we grew up just in a tough neighborhood. I mean, it was tough. Like we didn't have much money. My parents started a restaurant, and we grew up working. I mean, we just grew up working, and there was growing up at a massive fear that we would lose our house and restaurant, become homeless. That was my biggest fear.
Your parents were in the restaurant business. I love that, guys, because I spent 15 years. I spent 15 years in the restaurant business, so I know how tough that is.
It's a lot of work, right? And profit margins are tight, So, so growing up, we all worked. Like it was like I go to school, I go to work. I go to school, I go to work. So I started working in the restaurant like at 5 years old. We doing everything. We all pitched in. It was a family business, right? It was do it to survive, right? That was it. So growing up, I grew up just working, right? Whenever I had free time I had, I grew up doing whatever. And we talked about sports earlier. While my friends were out playing sports, if I did any sports, I did that, but then I went to work. So, growing up was all about work. And, fortunately over time, my parents were able to, start building the business up and start diversifying. And they were able to, have a little bit better life over probably took about 15 years to get to that point. Right. And, I continued to work for them until about 2002. And then at that point, they had built up other, income sources. So they sold the restaurant off because it really wasn't profitable at all. right? And that's when I had to go and get an actual job. I get a job because at this point I'm like, crap. Like at this point I was about to graduate high school and go to college.
And
And
you
my
never
parents,
thought about being in the restaurant business? Had you just had enough from being a kid working in that business?
yeah,
Had you just had, because that, and the reason I asked that
yeah,
question, Marcus, is that some kids that grow up in the restaurant business follow their parents into it
yeah,
and then generate, they bring their kids into it and they build that
yeah,
family lineage. What I hear what you're saying is my parents did it, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. This is
yeah,
what I'm hearing.
yeah,
My parents did it till they burned out, and I
yeah,
was not going to do that.
yep.
Is that kind of what you?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, at this point, like I remember they sold the restaurant. I'm like, okay, cool, great. Like, but I need to get a job. I still didn't know what I was gonna do, right? So started going to University of Oregon, and I went. I got a job selling Speedos, right? Selling Speedos at a Speedo store. That was my first job that I got because I was a competitive swimmer growing up, so it was an easy transition. So I was doing that job, and even when I was doing that while going to school, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I knew for sure I wanted nothing to do with the restaurant. Not want to do a single thing. And when I graduated, a few years later, I remember I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a business degree and also a Chinese degree. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? I have no idea.
Hey, Marcus, I've got to ask you this. I got to park here for just a
Yeah,
minute. How hard was it for you to be a competitive swimmer and go to
yeah,
school and work in your parents' restaurant and things like that? Because
yeah,
competitive swimming
yeah,
is not for the faint of heart. It's for one thing, there's not competitive
yeah,
pools
yeah.
around every corner like there
Right.
are like little league fields and
100% right. Yeah.
football fields and things like that. So how was it for you growing up to continue to do that with all the other demands
Yep.
on you and your time? And you're a young man. It's not
Yeah.
like you're in your 30s and things like that.
Yeah.
You're a kid trying to figure this out, and you're
Yeah.
competitively swimming. I mean, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, it was tough. Well, here what's funny, right? So, I never thought I'd be a competitive swimmer. So, growing up as a kid, like first off, like my parents thought I was special. I didn't start speaking until I was 4 years old, and when I did start speaking, I had a speech impediment. I had to go to speech therapy classes for years, speech therapy classes, anger management, etc. Because I had trouble communicating properly to people. So, it took me years to get over that. And then on top of that, I was terrible in basically every sport. Okay, so here I am, this kid who like can't really talk, and I'm terrible in every sport. And one of the sports that they thought I might be okay at was at swimming. And what was really funny is with the lessons at their local pool, their advanced class, it literally took me like 4 or 5 like times to finally pass the advanced class, which really wasn't that advanced. I mean, kids were like 6, 7 years old passing. I was 9 until I finally passed. So I got into competitive swimming then, and I was like, they really didn't know if I was gonna be any good at all because I could barely pass those swim classes. Fortunately, a year later, I was one of the fastest kids in the state, and then I just kind of picked it up. I'm like, okay, because I just kept going, right?
So was it
And
from when? Because I'm thinking about what you just said
yeah,
a minute ago and digesting that.
yeah,
And you begin talking at age 4. Most
yeah,
kids
yeah.
start at 2 or
Much
something
younger.
like
Oh yeah.
much younger and things like that. Did you ever internally wonder why it took you longer to
Oh
pick
yeah.
things up than other
Yeah.
kids and things like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I just thought I wasn't that smart. It was simple as that. I literally was like, I guess I'm not that smart. Like, I'm not that good at basketball. I'm not that good at these other sports. I can't really speak. And on top of that, of course, when you can't communicate at a young age, or even at any age, really, you get angry because you aren't able to express what's really going on between your ears, right? So at the time, I just thought I was like, well, I guess I'm just special, like, one of the special kids. Like, it was embarrassing having to leave class to go to a special classroom to have special classes with somebody else, right? It was already embarrassing enough that I was, one of 2 ethnic kids in this class of 30, right? So not only was I look different, now to go somewhere else to get special help, right?
Yeah.
So, and I just, growing up, I became very used to doing things I did not want to do, right? I did not want to work at the restaurant. I did it anyways. I did not want to work on weekends. I did it anyways. I did not want to go to Chinese school every Sunday. I did it anyways. I did not do all these things. Now, some kids get very resentful. I just did it anyways. So when I got to swimming, just pushing through and just being terrible, I just kept going. I just kept going because I'm like, I'm just gonna keep going. And I'm glad because, if I didn't, it took me multiple summers, by 10, I was one of the fastest kids, in the state. And I think I had a little more natural talent with swimming, right? I just, for some reason, couldn't pass the basic classes. But here's what's really funny. So was doing great, 11, 12, doing great. And then about 12, 13, every other kid hit puberty, basically, right? And they grew like a foot. I stayed like the same height. I've stayed the same height since I've been like 12. So I'm like, crap, everyone's a foot taller now. They're stronger, they're better, and they're whooping me in the pool. I mean, they are like, I went from like being one of the fastest kids to like just average swimmer. So I'm like, oh man. And I remember at that point, it's really interesting, right? Because I hit 13 or 14, and then I switched swim teams, got a different coach. And the coach, he was hard on us for sure, right? But he saw the potential in me. And, I went from a guy who was, good at one stroke, and he would grind us. I mean, we had 11 practices a week. Okay. I worked out 5 to 5.5 hours a day, 2 hours in the morning, 3.5 in the afternoon, including dryland practice and swimming. We swam on an average 10,000 meters a day. Okay. Not including all the dryland running and doing everything else. This is in high school. So there was no reason for excuses. We just got done, right? Wake up, go to practice, go to school, get off. If practice is right after, go to practice, go to a restaurant and work and do homework, right? It was just find a way to get done. There was excuses were just not an option. It was go get it done. So that's all I did, right? So for me, it was like, okay, cool. Going through and doing that, fine, no problem, right? So that was part of my life just growing up. So competitive swimming. So when I graduated high school, I had the choice to make. Either I go and swim collegiate somewhere, which I had many offers, but the amount of money was very small for scholarships, but I had to pay for school. So I chose University of Oregon because I'm like, I can go there, not pay a single thing. Like I got a full ride there. I can go there, not pay for a single thing, and just do that and not swim. And it was amazing. Only going to college full time, right? And then working part time only. It was amazing. I'm like, oh, cool. I can just work 30, 40 hours a week and just go to school. That's easy. Child's play. No swimming now. I have all this free time. So it's a mental shift, right, of growing up that way where I'm like, I can make this happen, right? So fast forward years down the road, whenever I have a lot of things going on, is it hard sometimes? For sure. Do I complain sometimes? For sure. We're human. But usually I'm like, you know what? How can I find a way to get everything done that I truly care about in a single day? So that forces me to be hyper productive in every single way of my life, whether it's sales, leadership, running my business, family person, or whatever it's going to be, right? Because it's all right here. It's all in your head. You can decide what you want to do, right? But you got to take action and find a way to get it done.
What's the biggest thing you learned from selling Speedos? Quite honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, because again, I can picture in this environment, you're working in a Speedo store, you have the competitive swimming background, and you would think, okay, well, it's a garment, not much to it, but you obviously, because again, I love your headline on LinkedIn. I'm looking at it, from selling Speedos to selling 7-figure contracts. So there was obviously something that you learned.
Oh yeah.
That translated. What was it?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things for sure, right? I mean, because that was retail, so people coming in. But here's what I found, right? I mean, there's probably a couple of different things. Number one, I would say, never assume what your customer needs. Never assume. Like they come in, you can't just assume that what they ask about is what they need, especially in retail. If you did that, you're just an order taker, right? Like I was able to double and quadruple their sales like quite often, like every day. Every time I was working, I would sell more than everyone else. Not because I knew so much about the product, but because I asked more questions. They would come in and say, hey, listen, I'm looking for a suit for my son. He's here, he's this size for practice. And I'd say, cool. Now, most people would say, okay, cool. Here's a suit. They bring them up. Cool. I'll say, great. like, like what's his stroke? What's his event? Because I knew the industry. I'll say, cool. Like, like, so you have a practice one. What about, do you have anything for, for backup? Well, what do you mean? Well, practice suits get worn out because you're in the pool. Oh, the chlorine. They're like, I guess not. Double order. What about competitive events? Need different suit? 100%. There's less drag with other suits. So what are you wearing for competitive events? Oh, didn't know that. Upsell, right? Cool. What about competitive racing goggles? Oh, you need those? Well, yeah, for sure. You have different set of goggles you need, but also what happens if a set of goggles breaks behind the blocks? Because that happens all the time for competitive swimmers. So like, I didn't think about that. Boom, upsell. But for me, that wasn't upselling. That was me having a conversation like, hey, listen, like, if you're going to go do this, this is what you need. Like, if someone's going to go on a hike somewhere, if I knew they needed certain things, I wouldn't let them leave without having the essentials. And that's all I was doing, just making sure I asked the right questions to see what do they truly need, because they didn't always know, So to me, that's a lesson that really applied down the road for sales across the board. Like making sure I ask the right questions and cover them, identifying the opportunity, right? Illuminating what potentially they may not know, but it's creating pain to make a sale happen. Those things I didn't realize what I was doing organically, because simply I was curious. I was just making sure I asked the right questions, making sure they'd be really happy, and I because I knew the field, I knew they need those things. So,
You've hit on something tremendous there. It is, and this is why I love doing the Intentional Encourager podcast, because you think people in their persona, and a lot more of us are getting more comfortable telling our stories. But I would not have known that you had not started speaking until you were 4 years old. That's an important part of your story.
mm-hmm.
That's an important part of your story, unless we got in and asked those questions.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pivot real quick here. What was the biggest obstacle, professionally, personally, that you've overcome? And what was the lesson you took from it?
Yeah, I would say the biggest obstacle for sure, easily, I would say hands down, is just really, you realize in life, anything you do, when you set big goals, the first thing that happens are obstacles show up, right? But 99.9% of them are all mental. And that's one thing I really learned early on, and I remember like when I first got into sales, I like true baby sales, I really struggled. And I thought to myself, I'm like, man, like this is so hard. My boss isn't training me. They haven't given me resources. I thought those are my obstacles, right? I thought my territory was an obstacle because the territory is smaller than everyone else's. I thought it was the recession. I thought the recession was an obstacle, right? I'm like, I have all these obstacles. None of those are my fault. But then once I started enlightening myself and realizing the only obstacle I had were right between my ears, that I myself was the ultimate obstacle. And if I could learn how to overcome that, that's going to help me achieve anything. So at the end of the day, once I realized that, as things have happened to me, that, whether it's like, I've been demoted, I've had like weird things happen. I've had top leaders tell me they're going to fire me. I've had people pull guns on me. I've had dogs bite me on cold calls. I've had all types of weird things that's happened to me. Right. But at the end of the day, I can't always control the external, but I can always control the internal. And once I realized that, obstacles are no longer obstacles. It becomes simply, okay, you know what? This is in my way. How can I find a way either around or through this? So I view obstacles very different than I used to, because obstacles before were a solid object in front of me. Now I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm having this issue. What can I do? Who can I reach out to? Who can help me through or around this? And we started thinking that way. Suddenly, obstacles aren't really anything. And when you think about this, it's Matt Damon in the movie The Martian talks a lot about this. When he's up there, on Mars trying to come home, and he has all these problems, he has all these obstacles, just like we all do. But the reality is he says, hey, when you have one problem, you solve it, and inevitably another problem will show up. You solve that problem, another problem will show up. But if you keep that cadence of just solving and overcoming these problems and challenges, if you solve enough problems, eventually you'll get to come home. And it's no different for our goals here. When you have big goals and you obstacles that show up and challenges that show up, if you can solve those problems and obstacles, eventually, if you stick to it, you'll eventually solve enough problems, and you'll hit your goals as well.
Man, that is so good. I've got to ask you this because I know that there's one more thing that you can share with this audience. Marcus, leave these folks with your biggest piece of intentional encouragement.
Yeah. So very, very simple. Stop comparing. Stop comparing. That's it. I mean, it seems so simple, but it's hard to do. And that's whether it's on social media, your friends, or family. The best thing you can do is focus on being the best version of yourself every single day. Be the best version of yourself every single day. Be better than yourself yesterday. And just if you do that consistently, you will see a lot of your anxiety and stress will start dissolving away when you stop comparing. Everyone's on their own journey. Everyone has their own problems. You may not always see, especially in the social media highlight reel. So focus on your own game and just giving your all every single day. And if you can do that consistently, you will see you'll be much happier and you'll thrive in life as a result.
I meant to ask you, tell me what that sign says behind you, that quote from Aristotle.
Yeah, so it's one of my favorite quotes is, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is then not an act, but a habit. And to me, it's one of the most powerful quotes out there because anybody can be great once. Anyone can wake up today and say, I'm going to crush it today. I'm going to be awesome on the phones today. Anyone can just do a great thing one time. But those who are truly excellent are able to be consistent. They're able to take the ordinary and do extraordinarily well by being super consistent in everything they do. So that's my favorite quote. That's what's on the wall.
Yeah, I had to ask. I couldn't let it go without asking about it. Marcus, tell folks how they can find you and connect with you on all your different social media platforms.
Awesome. So if you're on LinkedIn, super easy. Look up Marcus Chan. It's the only out of Speedos in the tagline, as you mentioned, Brian. A really simple place to find me is if you head over to marcuschan.io/resources. That's marcuschan.io/resources. Inside there are my social media handles. There's free training and resources all in one simple link right there for you.
Go connect with this guy, man. Marcus, I am so glad we had this conversation. It was so much fun because, again, I loved unpeeling the layers with you and just talking to you person to person, man. What a great conversation this has been. Thank you for joining me today on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Brian, thank you so much for having me on.
My thanks as always to producer Bryce Sexton and technical advisor Matt Means. And the ultimate thanks goes to the Lord Jesus Christ, who provides intentional encouragement every day through His Word. And until next time, remember, everyone, everywhere, at any time, and any place can be an intentional